Hello, all my dear followers. Welcome to the second episode of What If Naruto Mastered the Forgotten Art of Sealing. I just ask that you leave your like and comment, and if you haven't seen the previous episodes, you'll find them in a playlist on the channel. Enjoy!
On the bridge, work was progressing briskly until a thick fog began to roll in. The workers realized something wasn't quite right and ran for some kind of shelter. "This isn't normal fog," Kakashi told Sakura and Sasuke. He instructed the two to surround Tsunade and provide protection. It was then that two figures emerged from the dense fog. "We meet again, Kakashi," Zabuza said as he looked at the group in front of him. "But where is the blonde dwarf?" Zabuza asked in a mocking voice. Kakashi didn't respond and just lifted his headband, revealing his Sharingan. "Fine. I guess I'll have to settle with you then." Zabuza removed his giant sword and plunged the blade into the bridge. "Haku, take care of the others." Haku nodded briefly. Zabuza then noticed that Sasuke was trembling very slightly. "Look at him, he's very scared." "No, I'm just excited. I've been bored all day." Sasuke sneered as he charged at Haku, who attacked back. They both threw a punch that connected. Sasuke smirked, but frowned when Haku grabbed his arm. Haku then began performing a series of one-handed seals that worried Kakashi. "I'm sorry, but Zabuza-sama wishes you to leave," Haku stated calmly as he stomped his foot, sending water into the air. Suetun, Sensatsu Susho, water release, 8,000 flying water needles of death. The surrounding water soon transformed into Senbon and began to fly towards Sasuke. An explosion of water followed as Haku jumped out of range of his own jutsu. Haku watched the water as it slowly fell to the ground, but before he could react, Sasuke kicked him in the side of the face. "He's fast," Zabuza thought as he watched Sasuke out of the corner of his eye while he fought Kakashi. He brought his sword down to try and cleave Sasuke in half, but his sword stopped when Kakashi used his kunai to block. "I thought you were going to come after me," Kakashi said coldly to Zabuza, receiving a rock-hard glare. "Fine. If you want to die that badly, I'll be more than happy to send you to hell," Zabuza declared as he thrust his sword, forcing Kakashi back. Sasuke watched as Haku stood up and saw Haku staring at him coldly through his mask. "You're pretty fast, Uchiha," Haku said, making Sasuke smile a little wider. "So you know about the Uchiha clan?" Sasuke asked in more of a statement than a question. "Yes. Zabuza-sama told me to study the different clan symbols and what they look like," Haku told him calmly. "The Uchiha clan always has that red paper fan on the back of their shirt and always has black eyes with black hair." Haku raised his hands in the form of a tiger seal. "But even your power can't stop mine." Hayatan, Makio Hyosho, ice release, demonic ice crystal mirrors. Then, the area transformed into a dome containing 21 mirrors. Sasuke watched as Haku stepped back and sank into one of the mirrors, his image appearing in all of them. "This is my ultimate technique that you cannot escape," a voice shouted from all directions, echoing throughout the room. Sasuke began forming hand signs and released a giant fireball that hit one of the mirrors. But when the steam stopped coming out of the mirror, Sasuke noticed that the mirror didn't even melt a little. "Was that your best chance?" the hundreds of images of Haku asked as they pulled out a bunch of Senbon. "Now let me show you mine." The entire dome erupted in a light that blinded Sasuke, and a barrage of Senbon came out of nowhere, turning him into a pincushion. Sasuke fell to one knee as the light faded. "I can't see it," Sasuke muttered to himself. He looked up and saw all the images of Haku preparing for another assault. "Are you ready to give up?" Haku asked in an omnipresent tone, making Sasuke even angrier. "I'm an Uchiha. I refuse to give up so easily," Sasuke growled as he ripped a bunch of Senbon from his body. Haku simply shook his head, not liking where this would eventually lead. "Please forgive me, Uchiha." Haku was ready for another assault when a kunai flew towards the mirror he was standing in. The kunai surprisingly got caught in the mirror and Haku saw the explosive tag attached to it. When the tag exploded, Haku and Sasuke noticed that the tag seemed to have much more force behind it than other normal tags. "And please forgive me for interrupting your little fight," a mocking voice sounded, and Haku saw the hardened expression of Naruto, who was now standing next to Sasuke. "Dobe, what are you doing here? You should be watching the house," Sasuke said to Naruto in an annoyed voice. "Well, I think I'll help you keep this guy from killing you," Naruto said. "And besides, I left you with more than enough to protect you." Zabuza wondered what was taking Haku so long and decided right then to see how Haku was doing. His eyes widened with unmasked joy when he saw Naruto. "Good, good, good," Zabuza said, deflecting Kakashi's kunai. "I think I just found my next prey." Kakashi was confused by Zabuza's sudden distraction. He followed Zabuza's gaze, his expression taking on one of shock as he realized what Zabuza was implying. "What is he doing here?" Kakashi thought in surprise. "Perhaps now I can have that rematch." Zabuza shouted mockingly loud enough for Naruto to hear, but Naruto kept staring at Haku. "Oh, this day just keeps getting better and better. Don't you agree, Kakashi?" Kakashi looked at Zabuza smirking and attacked. "Why did you jump?" Haku asked from the mirror next to Naruto. "Because, even if he acts like an idiot," this received a death glare from Sasuke, "he's still my teammate and friend. I won't allow you to hurt him, Haku." Haku's eyes widened slightly as shock crossed his eyes. Haku was surprised that Naruto knew it was him and wondered what else Naruto knew. "How did you know it was me?" Haku asked. "Because both your voice and hair color are exactly the same," Naruto said with a smile as he got into a taijutsu stance. His legs were spread, one behind him and the other in front. His arms were held out in front of him with his hands half open and then closed. "Where were we just now?" "Oh yeah. Fighting." Naruto's voice was cold and devoid of emotion. Sasuke was shocked by the sudden change in Naruto and just stared at Naruto's sadistic face. Haku mentioned her senbons, and Sasuke forced himself to look away from Naruto. Sasuke clasped his hands in a tiger seal as Haku prepared to throw her senbons, and Naruto's smile widened even further. Kakashi was forced to dodge Zabuza's sword as it attempted to take his head off. Zabuza used the momentum of his sword to flip him over and delivered a powerful kick to Kakashi's chest, sending Kakashi flying backward. "Your ability is slipping, Kakashi," Zabuza said. "Is it because you're worried about your little students? Don't worry, because when I'm done with you, I'll be sure to send them your way as well. That way, you won't have to worry about them getting lost in hell." Zabuza sneered sadistically. Kakashi stood up, ignoring the pain in his chest, and ran towards Zabuza. Zabuza finished a series of hand signs, and Kakashi had no choice but to watch as the mist consumed Zabuza, the last of Zabuza's tiger seals disappearing at last. "I have to win," Kakashi thought with determination as he thought of these students. Naruto was thrown to the ground after another failed attempt to destroy another of Haku's mirrors. He managed to reach one and, after attaching 2 of his special explosive tags to the stupid thing, finally managed to bring it down. However, as soon as it was destroyed, Haku made another one to replace it. "Damn it!" Naruto cursed in his mind. "This isn't getting us anywhere. The seals I have with me are useless against this shit. My Tenran can't penetrate it, and my Byakurai is bouncing off. The only thing I have that does any real damage is my explosive tags and using my Kage Bunshins to distract it." She looked at Sasuke and noticed that he too was starting to breathe heavily. "We can't keep going like this. Either we'll run out of chakra or he'll kick us out," Naruto thought. "So what's the plan, Dobe?" Sasuke asked as he stood up, breaking Naruto's train of thought. "Okay, so you're asking the kid you call a drug for a plan?" Naruto said sarcastically. "That's not very smart of you, don't you think?" "Well, why don't you use your hidden FUINJUTSU?" Sasuke's voice darkened with irritation. "The FUINJUTSU I have with me right now are completely useless. Besides, I have almost no explosive seals." Naruto told him indifferently in a voice that implied Sasuke should have known better, and Sasuke looked at him. Sasuke began to rage at the fact that the only thing that was giving them any sort of hope was gone when Naruto spoke again. "But you've noticed." "Have you noticed what?" "The time to rebuild their mirrors is decreasing," Naruto said in a calm voice, as he pointed towards one of the mirrors he had just destroyed. "Your point is," Sasuke said, obviously confused about how this could help them. "Well, if I'm correct, then it means his chakra level must be getting lower and lower," Naruto said. So all we have to do is survive until his chakra is completely depleted. Sasuke looked at the mirror and then at Naruto. A wide grin began to spread across Sasuke's face, and his expression was that of someone who was about to have a lot of fun. Okay, what do you need? Sasuke asked. First, I need to force him to expend a lot more chakra. Naruto clasped his fingers together in his cross seal. When 4 Kage Bunshins appeared, Naruto handed them the last 4 explosive tags he had left. What I need is for you to help me defend them, Naruto instructed Sasuke. Sasuke nodded, pulling out a kunai. Haku watched as Naruto and Sasuke quickly exchanged their plan and frowned after hearing what they were about to do. So they realized my jutsu's weakness. Haku thought, it still won't help them. I still have plenty of chakra left, and I have more surprises waiting for them. Haku watched as the 4 clones scattered to different sides of the area, trying to get close enough to plant the tags. Haku moved away from the mirror toward one of the clones when he was forced to dodge when a fireball missed him by inches. Haku threw 4 senbon, all aimed at the clones. However, to Haku's surprise, the clones activated the barrier seal on their necks to defend themselves when the senbon came within a couple of inches. As they consumed all their chakra with the seal, the clones slowed down and disappeared, but they resealed the barrier seal before vanishing. All right, it's showtime, Naruto shouted, a sadistic grin on his face. Naruto clasped his hands in the tiger seal and detonated the seals. The explosion shook the ground, and everyone, including Kakashi and Sakura, looked in the direction trying to figure out what had just happened. To their dismay, all they saw was a giant fireball where the ice dome used to be. Naruto, Sasuke, Kakashi shouted, worried for the safety of his students. He saw 3 silhouettes jump out of the fire and saw that 2 of them were Sasuke and Naruto. Both of their clothes were burned, but other than that, they were fine. Haku was unharmed aside from his slightly cracked mask. Shit, Naruto cursed. He cancelled his jutsu before I could detonate the bombs. Naruto seethed as he glared daggers at Haku, who was standing calmly with his mask broken. Sasuke just grunted and got into position. Naruto stood not far from him and also fell into his stance. They both looked at Haku, their eyes having an identical steely gleam. Why do you keep fighting when you know you can't win? Haku said in a slightly surprised voice. Why? Because if we give up, a lot of people will suffer and die, Naruto said, his voice devoid of all emotion. We don't have the luxury of giving up. While creating 4 Kage Bunshins, Naruto charged at Haku. Haku raised his hands and brought them together. Hayatan, Hyoga Siren, Ice Release, Glacier Vapor Storm. The water around Haku circled right behind him, but instead of looking like water, it looked something like frost, but blue. The icy wave roared forward, and before anyone could react, all of Naruto's clones were consumed. As the wave died down, everyone saw that Naruto and his clones were frozen inside a giant block of ice. That's the dash dot. Haku let a small smile appear on his face as he spoke, but before he could finish, he was sent flying by a kick to the face from Naruto. How? Haku wondered as he looked at the giant block. He saw that the clones and Naruto were gone. So what I froze were just his clones. He sends clones into battle first to test his opponent, Haku concluded. Haku then noticed something shading the sun and looked up to see Sasuke right above him. Sasuke had his fingers in a tiger seal and smiled at him. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. Sasuke yelled as he released a giant fireball that consumed Haku, but instead of screams, all Sasuke and Naruto saw was steam. Sasuke stopped breathing fire and saw that the Haku he was firing at was nothing but ice. What did you think of Isu Bunshin, Ice Clone? A soft voice asked from behind. Sasuke spun around, eyes wide, but Haku punched him hard in the face. Naruto caught Sasuke before he could hit the bridge and hurt himself further. Please back off. I don't want to kill you, Haku told them in a gentle, respectful tone. The tone enraged Sasuke and Naruto. Sasuke turned away from Naruto and stood up to attack Haku once more. Haku simply stared as Sasuke charged, then threw 10 senbon at Naruto. Naruto saw the speed at which the senbon were coming and knew he wouldn't be able to dodge them all. Shit, Sasuke thought as he changed direction. Naruto raised his hands to protect his vital areas, but the attack never hit him. When he looked up, he saw Sasuke standing in front of him with the senbon sticking out of his back. Why? I don't know. My body just moved, Sasuke told Naruto as he fell backward and Naruto grabbed him. I can't die, not here. I still need to kill him. Sasuke closed his eyes as he breathed out the words with difficulty. As Naruto watched Sasuke slowly die, his memory of Iruka's death flashed through his mind. Iruka's face replacing Sasuke's. Not again. Naruto screamed in his mind as he posed on Sasuke's body. I'll crush you, Naruto yelled as he turned to Haku, and Haku saw that Naruto's light blue eyes had turned into sedimented blood-red eyes. Haku suddenly felt a massive surge of demonic energy cascading through Naruto. What is this? Haku thought as Naruto charged at him in a burst of speed. Triple X. Zabuza threw a punch and missed Kakashi by mere inches, but then he felt massive chakra surge. What the hell is that? Zabuza asked, amazed by the sheer power it radiated. Shit, the seal broke. Kakashi thought as he frowned, and after a moment of observing the red chakra, he breathed a sigh of relief. No, but some of the Kyuubi's chakra spilled out. I would suppress the chakra now, but I have to end this fight now. Kakashi took out a scroll and turned to Zabuza. Zabuza, how about we end this little fight of ours? I mean, we're both busy men, Kakashi told him calmly. Harsh words coming from someone who can't see. Zabuza's voice mocked the mist. Oh, but I don't have to find you. Kakashi cut his hand and smeared some blood on the scroll. Kakashi smashed it on the floor. They do. Suddenly, the ground cracked, and a muffled howl of pain was heard. The mist began to disappear, revealing Zabuza, who was pinned down by several dogs. Now we're done with this. Zabuza watched as Kakashi's right hand erupted into lightning. Triple X, why did you do it? Naruto yelled as he punched Haku in the face. Haku stumbled and fell, but got back up. I did it for my goal, Haku said with a slight smile. My goal is to make Zabuza-sama's dream come true. You see, he saved me from death a long time ago. Haku then proceeded to tell Naruto about the Kekkai Genkai purges of Kirigakure and what happened to his family and everything Zabuza did for him. When he finished the story, Naruto felt sorry for Haku. Kill me, Haku asked Naruto. This request surprised Naruto. Naruto simply stared at Haku, his jaw hanging, confusion in his now cerulean eyes. I'm a broken tool. I'll only delay Zabuza's goal. You'll be doing me a favor. Please kill me. Naruto just glared at Haku and took a step forward. But before he could reach him, both Naruto and Haku felt the surge of electric chakra. Zabuza-sama, Haku shouted as he disappeared in a burst of smoke. Shit. Naruto cursed as he turned and ran in the direction Haku disappeared, but found himself dizzy and disoriented. I won't make it, Triple X. Goodbye, Zabuza. Kakashi smiled as he flung his arm forward. Zabuza closed his eyes, knowing there was no way out, but the attack never connected. Zabuza opened his eyes to see Haku standing right in front of him and saw that Kakashi's hand didn't pierce through either Haku's or Zabuza's chest. Instead, it pierced through the purple barrier, which shattered upon impact. The only thing that saved Haku from the electric chakra was that Kakashi's electric chakra, Chidori, suddenly shut off. Kakashi looked at his arm in surprise at the sudden stop of his chakra and saw a chakra suppression seal on it. Shit, it's blocking the flow of my chakra. Kakashi cursed in his mind. Zabuza smirked as he realized he could kill Kakashi, but a giant shuriken streaked through the air and landed in front of him as he swung his sword. He saw that Naruto was standing on top of the shuriken that separated Zabuza and Haku from Kakashi. Sakura saw Naruto and was about to speak, but then she saw that Naruto was alone. She looked where Naruto came from and saw Sasuke lying unconscious on the ground. She gasped and started running towards the motionless Sasuke with Tsunade hot on her heels. How could you treat Haku like that? Naruto demanded an answer, his expression hard. You were preparing to impale him. Why? Why do you care? Zabuza mocked him. Because Haku told me how you rescued him. An evil person would never do something like that. Naruto told her, his voice a little lower this time. Zabuza simply snorted. He's nothing more than a tool to me, Zabuza said. Haku looked down at the ground with a serene face, and the expressionless face infuriated Naruto. He's not a tool. Damn you! Naruto snarled at Zabuza. He's a human being. No matter how much you try to escape that little fact, he's Kirigakure no Kijin, and so are you. If he was just a tool, why did you take such good care of him? This made Zabuza look away. Naruto began to speak once more. He told me everything. He told me he was chasing a rabbit and fell. He told me that you caught the rabbit and gave it to him. A demon would never do that. Zabuza, you care about him. But the question is, why are you hiding him? Zabuza opened his mouth to speak, but then he heard clapping not far away. Cat! Zabuza growled as he collapsed to one knee. What are you doing here? What? Didn't I tell you? I don't need you anymore. Gato said this with a sadistic smile. Bring me the masked boy. I want to kill him with my own hands. This small comment made Zabuza tighten his grip on his sword, his knuckles turning white. Naruto took a stance, but when Kakashi looked at him, he could see that Naruto was starting to breathe heavily again. I'll split you in half before you even lay a hand on him, Gato. Zabuza yelled and charged into the crowd. Haku charged at Zabuza. Naruto, seeing this, quickly summoned Kage Bunshins, but due to his low chakra level, he only managed to summon 2. His 2 clones went after Haku and stopped him. You're low on chakra. Naruto gasped as his breathing became increasingly labored. If you go out, you'll get in Zabuza's way. Haku stood back and watched as Zabuza swung his giant sword, striking down 4 men with each slash. In the path of the menacing sword, the mob began to pour down like rain. However, numbers began to gain the upper hand. Zabuza had spears and other weapons glued to him, but he kept going. He dropped his sword after a blade pierced his right shoulder, but grabbed a kunai with his own. When he got close enough, he struck, and Gato watched with fear as Zabuza stabbed him through the heart. 1. The boy was right, Gato, Zabuza said. I'm no demon, but where we're going, there are plenty of demons there. Demons of all shapes and sizes. I think I'll fit in just fine. But you, Gato, are in for a world of hurt. Zabuza dropped the kunai and watched as Gato fell backward into the ocean. Zabuza looked up at the sky and then looked behind him to see the rest of the crowd. They had their weapons raised, ready to deliver the finishing blow. I wish I could travel with you one last time, Haku, Zabuza thought as he closed his eyes, but opened them when he heard something in the air. Zabuza saw Naruto's giant shuriken pierce through the 4 men who tried to take Zabuza down. The mob turned around and saw an incredible sight. There were over 20 Kakashi, 2 Naruto, a wave of ice began to form, and the entire village was there, armed with various weapons ranging from scythes to rakes. If you're smart, then I suggest you run, Kakashi growled, and before he could even finish, the crowd began to jump off the bridge. Zabuza soon collapsed and landed on his side. Haku ran towards his mentor. When Haku reached Zabuza, Haku just stared at Zabuza's mutilated body in shock while Zabuza just laughed. I never thought it would feel like this, Zabuza said. Zabuza-sama. Tears began to roll down Haku's cheeks and Zabuza scolded him. I thought I told you. Ninja, don't cry, Zabuza told Haku in a gentle tone. We're trained not to feel anything. I'm sorry. Haku apologized, tears still streaming down her cheeks. Zabuza just stared until he spoke with what little strength he had left in his body. Live Haku, Zabuza told him. I don't care how, but I don't want you around. I don't need a tool like you. I don't want you crying for me, you pathetic weakling. Do you understand? Haku watched as Zabuza closed his eyes and never opened them again. XXX. Sakura was crying, not because Sasuke was dead. The reason she was crying was because Sasuke was alive. What happened? Sasuke growled. Sakura squeezed Sasuke's semi-cold hand as tightly as she could. That Haku person put you in a sort of death-like state, Sakura said, still crying. As long as the needles were inside you, you wouldn't be able to move and you'd appear dead. Sasuke only thought about the last thing he remembered, and what he remembered scared him. He remembered seeing Naruto covered in a strange red aura that chilled him to the bone. XXX. Outside, on a hill facing the sun, there was a small grave with a few flowers and a giant sword sticking out of the head. Haku stood in front of the grave and wept. Naruto approached and placed a comforting hand on Haku's shoulder. You know, he didn't mean what he said, Naruto told Haku, causing Haku to look at him in surprise. He said what he said to push you forward and not dwell on the past. I know what it's like to lose someone you thought of as a father, Haku. Haku looked at him with confused eyes. Naruto proceeded to tell her what happened to him. You see, my father figure was Irika-sensei, my sensei from long ago, but when I was tricked into this plot against me, he died to protect me. After that day, I promised myself that I would train to perfect everything about me. I told myself that I would never let anyone suffer or die trying to protect me or any of my friends, so it doesn't help to dwell on the past, Haku. Move forward and don't let Zabuza's death go in vain. Naruto turned to Haku and held out his hand. It was nice meeting you, Haku, and perhaps we could meet again in the future. Haku looked at the offered hand and shook it. The two of them never noticed that Kakashi was looking at them from a distance with a smile. XXX. After Gato's death, the villagers looted his tower and found some items that could help them rebuild their village. After 3 days of construction, the bridge was finally completed, and Team 7 was saying their goodbyes when 3 people ran up to them. One was Haku, the other was Tsunade, and then Inari. Naruto, wait! Inari shouted. Naruto turned around and saw that Tsunade had something in his hands. Are you really leaving? Inari and Tsunade asked. Inari burst into tears as Naruto nodded solemnly. I promised to come back, Naruto told Inari in a desperate attempt to calm her down. Besides, someone has to keep an eye on Haku, Naruto said, and Haku just smiled mischievously. Tsunade then handed Naruto the box she was holding. Then Naruto, please accept this as a token of our gratitude and a constant reminder of your former home here. Naruto received the box with a confused expression. He opened the box and found a beautiful cloak. The bottom had what appeared to be waves crashing against some invisible force. It was designed in blue and orange, and on the back had a design that appeared to be wind at the top combining with the water, creating a giant maelstrom. It had sleeves, but where the sleeve ended, it looked like it was in tatters. The watch also sported a hood that was completely orange, but what touched Naruto the most was the message on the back. Naruto Uzumaki, the maelstrom of waves. Naruto smiled at Tsunade and she smiled back. Naruto then, without warning, gave her a very tight hug. Thank you. This means a lot to me. Naruto turned to leave, but Haku stopped him. I found these in Gato's personal storage, Haku told him in his usual calm voice. Haku handed Naruto a pair of dusty arm and leg guards. Naruto just stared at them with a confused expression. He looked at Haku questioningly. I appreciate you being surprised by who owns them. Haku smiled as she said to Naruto. Naruto took the guards and wiped the dust, founding the Uzumaki clan seal at the top, and there was a name on the bottom right below the symbol. Uzushio Uzumaki. Naruto was surprised. But I thought ... that would have been destroyed, Haku said. I don't know how they fell into Gato's hands or how they were injured in Gato's tower. The last time I went up there, I didn't see those items. Naruto's grip tightened on the guards and he gave Haku a grateful smile. Thanks, Haku. Haku simply smiled back at Naruto. Naruto smiled happily and his team said goodbye to the villagers. Hey father, we still have to name the bridge, Tsunade said, which made Tazuna smile. You're right, and I think I have the perfect name, Tazuna said. Naruto's Great Bridge. That prompted a round of cheers from everyone. XXX. Why did you let him go? Naruto asked Kakashi, curiosity evident on his face. Because Haku isn't registered in any bingo books that I know of, Kakashi said, still looking at his porn book. Besides, I saw you two become friends. You would have fought to try and keep Haku safe, Kakashi explained while rubbing the top of his head. That's what a true friend is, Naruto. XXX. Unknown location. Master, we have bad news. A voice called from the shadows. What's the problem? A giant man with a deep voice asked in an irritated voice. We've received news from our spy in Yuzu no Kuni. The first voice began to speak further, but then the giant man grabbed him by the throat. We destroyed Yuzu no Kuni. The man grunted as he dropped his messenger. I apologize, the messenger said with a bow. Our spy in Nami no Kuni has reported something that would probably upset you greatly. Stop beating around the bush. Tell me. Another tone of anger was added to the man's voice. A young Uzumaki opened the vault of the Uzumaki scroll room. This caused the reaction the messenger feared. His master punched the wall, causing it to shatter. When did this happen? He shouted in a burst of rage. Not long ago. Maybe 2 days. The messenger informed his master, ready to run if his master's anger got out of hand. Damn Uzumaki. Kill 1 and 2 more appear. He muttered to himself and turned to his messenger. We must do everything we can to find and eliminate this one. The messenger nodded and disappeared. I will crush the Uzumaki once and for all, the man shouted. The loud roar echoed through the walls of the building, breaking the eerie silence that hung over them. Having decided to wear the clothes Tsunade and Haku gave him, Naruto proudly wore his Uzumaki attire. To everyone's surprise, even more stares, and occasionally a few glances, were directed his way. The increased stares confused both Sakura and Sasuke. What the hell is he joking about? Wearing such extravagant Uzumaki clothing? Whispers and insults followed Naruto. Naruto simply ignored them as best he could, but as they walked through Konoha, the insults increased. It got so bad that Kakashi had to tell the team to head to the rooftops and run to the tower. Kakashi looked back and saw that Naruto had his hood up, keeping his entire face hidden. Naruto, how are you? Kakashi asked, worried. I'm fine, Naruto said as he looked up, and Kakashi saw his smile accompanied by a happy tone. How does he take it? Kakashi thought, frowning to himself. The team arrived at the tower and walked up to the Hokage's room. Hearing the sound, Sarutobi saw Team 7 enter. He immediately noticed the change in Naruto's attire as Naruto lowered his hood. Hey, Hokage-sama, Naruto said with a friendly gesture. Sarutobi looked at the clothing Naruto was wearing. He was surprised by the hand and shin guards, but what surprised Sarutobi most were the symbols on the guards. This is bad, Sarutobi thought. After hearing Kakashi's mission report, he handed him a scroll and told him to go read it privately. Naruto, I need to talk to you, Sarutobi said to Naruto. Naruto was confused as if the Hokage wished to speak to him, but he turned around anyway and waited for the Hokage to speak while the rest of his team left the room. Naruto, where did you get those items? Sarutobi asked with a slight frown on his face. Oh, the people of Nami no Kuni made the cloak for me, Naruto said, gesturing to the flowing fabric. And the guards came from an ancient ancestor of mine named Uzushio Uzumaki, Sarutobi finished. Naruto, I don't think it's safe to be in public. Why? Also, how did you know who used to have these guards? Naruto asked, obviously surprised by Sarutobi's knowledge. Sarutobi just rubbed the top of his head, unsure of what he should say. After a little debate in his head, he decided to tell Naruto part of the truth. Well, Uzushio and Konoha used to be in an alliance, Sarutobi said. The Uzumaki clan and the Senju clan were a close-knit family. How do you know this? Naruto asked, a small frown forming on his face. Sarutobi stood up and looked out the window. His eyes had a distant look as he recalled old memories from over a decade and a half ago. That's because I was the one who gave the order to erase all information on the Uzumaki clan and Uzushio and seal everything. Sarutobi turned around and looked at Naruto with a sad face, and Naruto just looked at the old Hokage with obvious surprise on his face. Why? Naruto asked, unable to think of any reason that would have caused the Hokage to seal all information about his clan, his mother's now endangered clan. It was for the best. Sarutobi sat down as he said quietly to Naruto, if you had been found out to be from the Uzumaki clan, you would have been hunted down. People feared your clan, Naruto, especially Uzushio, who was the clan head and king of the village. The man was known for making FUINJUTSU more potent in battle, to the extent that no one could come within 12 miles of him without being seen. Because of this, other villages began to fear Uzushio, and 2 of the villages decided to take action and destroyed them. Sarutobi paused for a moment and took a deep breath before continuing. If I recall correctly, Uzushio was the first to be attacked to such a degree that he should have died on the spot. But even with his mortal wound, he stood up and defended his village until his last breath. To know how dangerous an Uzumaki is when angered, look no further than Uzushio. Naruto's cerulean eyes widened a fraction as he took in all the new information. Just before he died, Uzushio placed a seal on his body known as Yura Shisho FUINJUTSU, reverse 4-symbol sealing technique, and in an instant, only 400 of the 3,000 ninja still alive escaped being sealed into Uzushio's corpse. He was feared for his use of Yura Shisho FUINJUTSU, and that was just one of the many things he used it for. Wow! Naruto spoke in a low voice. He created clones, and after sealing the enemy within his clones by activating his seal, he detonated them. He even sealed away people who tried to smuggle his secrets into the forests surrounding Uzushio-gakure. However, despite these sorts of defined battle goals, there was a good heart and he even had a son. Sarutobi noticed Naruto's eyes widen and quickly corrected himself. But it wasn't you, Naruto. His son was born years before you. If I recall correctly, I believe it was during the Nidaime Hokage's reign. So you kept this information a secret to protect me. Naruto said, Yes, Naruto, but it seems my full measure didn't go as far as Nami no Kuni. Sarutobi looked down at his desk. I was thinking of telling you about your clan when you were older, but it seems you can't wait. Naruto looked at his feet with guilt. Wait! Sarutobi looked up as Naruto started speaking and saw Naruto looking quite uncomfortable. Who were my parents? Sarutobi bit his lip because he knew that the more Naruto knew, the more danger he would be in. I don't know, Naruto. Sarutobi lied. But I can tell you this. Your parents loved you so much that they willingly gave their lives to keep you safe. This made Naruto smile. Now, Naruto, I need to ask you. Do you want to continue using those items? Naruto looked thoughtful for a second or two and then smiled. I want to make my clan proud, so yes, Naruto said with his famous fox-like grin. I'll make sure Uzushio's sacrifice isn't forgotten. I'll make sure everyone remembers the Uzumaki name. This rather proud statement made Sarutobi nervous, but he smiled at Naruto anyway. Fine. It's your choice, Naruto. That's when Sarutobi remembered something. Oh, and watch out for those guards you're using. Uzushio was also known for placing seals on armor, weapons, and clothing. Since those things once belonged to him, I'm pretty sure he put some seals on them that I can only imagine. Naruto nodded, stood up, and left without another word. After Naruto closed the door, Sarutobi frowned. You'd better be careful. I have a feeling things are going to get a lot more difficult, Naruto. Sarutobi spoke softly. XXX. In a large room, the only source of light came from candles that stretched along the walls. Master, we have an update. A dark-cloaked man wearing what looked like a bird mask spoke up. An old man turned around, leaning heavily on his cane. His body was covered in bandages, making him look like a weak old man. But that would be a mistake one shouldn't make with this man. Speak, Danzo said as he looked at his subordinate, and the man bowed deeper. It seems the target is taking over your family more and more. The man looked at Danzo. He seems to be speeding through his training. Danzo nodded and looked at the candle. We need to make sure he's safe. Danzo looked at the root member who kept his head down. We need to make sure he's under surveillance without anyone noticing. If we can keep him safe from them, then we'll gain a strong weapon once again. ANBU member Root nodded obediently and disappeared. Uzumaki Naruto, you will be the perfect weapon. But first I must keep you under control. Perhaps the council should be alerted to Uzumaki's condition. Danzo mused to himself. Danzo walked into the shadows, disappearing from sight, the tap of his staff echoing on the stone floor of the deserted hallway. XXX. Very well. I have a question for you, Kakashi said sternly. The Chunin exams are being held here, and I need you to tell me if you wish to participate. The team looked at each other for a moment before nodding to their sensei. All right, you have the rest of the day to yourself. Enjoy. Kakashi disappeared and silence fell, only to be broken by Sakura a moment later. Hey Sasuke, do you want to go hang out? Sakura asked, but Sasuke just walked away without giving an answer. Naruto looked at Sakura dejectedly and suddenly had an idea. Sakura, Sakura looked at Naruto with slight irritation on her face because she was upset that Sasuke had rejected her once again. I'm planning on going out with Hinata's team. Do you want to join? Sakura thought about it and nodded. Okay, let's go. Naruto walked with Sakura right behind him. Naruto found Team 8 and waved and smiled. The group smiled back, all except one. Hinata blushed bright red and shyly looked down at the ground. XXX. So, it looks like you had fun on your mission, Kiba said with a smile. Man, I wish we could have gotten a mission like that. I'd hardly call almost being killed fun, Kiba. Shino said sadly as she took a bite of her winter melon. Oh, come on, Shino. Don't you want to be in a battle? Sounds super fun to me. Shino just shook his head as if he thought Kiba was being childish, which he actually was, and continued eating silently. Kiba just turned back to his food and started eating. So, how have you been, Hinata? Naruto said with an enthusiastic smile. Learning any new jutsu? At first, Hinata looked at the ground and then at Naruto. Yes. Hinata said. I've been de-developing my own jutsu, BU, but it still needs some work. At that, Naruto smiled even wider and gave a thumbs up, causing Hinata's cheeks to turn the deepest shade of red. Red even at the base of her neck. Great, Hinata. I can't wait to see it in action. Hinata blushed even more, if that was possible considering how much she had already blushed. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the small dirt road, causing Naruto and his friends to immediately crack their necks at the spot where the scream had come from. XXX. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean to bump into you, Konohamaru said as a kid in makeup pulled him up off the ground by his shirt. Yes, sorry, it's okay. But you're about to be even more so. He never had time to finish because he felt someone place a kunai to his throat. I seriously suggest you let him go. A cold voice suggested, actually more like a demand or an order. He looked over and saw a blond boy with the kunai at his throat, and there were other people nearby, some of whom were prepared to attack if necessary. Now, the blonde pressed. He dropped Konohamaru, and Konohamaru ran to hide behind a rather irritated Sakura. Are you okay, Konohamaru? The blonde boy asked, his eyes still fixed on the boy wearing purple makeup. At this, the boy nodded his head fervently. Judging by your headband, you're here for the Chunin exams, Naruto said, narrowing his eyes slightly. I told you not to cause trouble, Kankuro. A cold voice came from behind Naruto. A blonde kunoichi who appeared to be with the boy wearing makeup gasped and grabbed an oversized fan she had with her. But Naruto wasn't concerned about her. Naruto was busy staring at a tree that held a red-haired boy with black rings around his eyes. Tamari, Kankuro, what are you doing? The redhead said coldly in a flat voice. Gaara, we were just dash. The makeup-wearing boy named Kankuro started to speak, but trailed off when the redhead started looking at him. Kankuro, shut up before I kill you. The cold statement made Kankuro shut up and stare at the ground. And take that kunai away from his throat. The red-haired boy named Gaara instructed Naruto with a glare. Naruto smiled, though the smile didn't reach his eyes, and released Kankuro in a not-so-gentle manner, placing his kunai back in its place in his pouch. Well, it looks like we have an interesting cast of contestants for the Chunin exams. Gaara disappeared and then reappeared next to Naruto in a swirl of sand as she spoke in an emotionless voice. Gaara glared at Naruto, and Naruto, feeling quite defiant, glared back with equal intensity. Then the two broke off staring and parted without a word. Naruto, what was that? Sasuke asked, watching the last bits of Naruto's conversation with Gaara. Naruto looked back and saw Gaara give him one last look before leaving. I don't know, but I think he's someone we should watch out for. Naruto frowned slightly as he thought about what had just happened and how the two obviously older children were listening to the red-haired Gaara as if they were afraid of him. With that, the group left without another word to continue their day off. XXX. Okay, tell me, what teams are competing in the Chunin exam? Sarutobi said with his fingers interlaced, resting them lightly on his desk that was filled with paperwork. I recommend Team 8 for the Chunin exams, Kurenai said confidently. They work well together. The only problem they might encounter is Kiba's need to prove himself in fights. Sarutobi nodded and addressed the others. I recommend Team 10 for the Chunin exams, Asuma announced. Their teamwork is almost as good as their parents. I recommend Team 9 for the Chunin exams, Guy said with vigor in his voice. Their flames of youth are finally bright enough to blind their opponents and lead them to victory. Team 7 is ready for the Chunin exams. The other Jonin just stared at Kakashi as he spoke. Sasuke is an excellent fighter. Naruto is good at finding openings in his opponent and then exploiting them, and Sakura is the smartest of them all. So with those elements combined, you'll ace the exam. Sarutobi nodded and then dismissed the Jonin. Now, the stage is set for the Chunin exams. Sarutobi said this as he looked out the window, a slight frown creasing his already wrinkled face. But for some reason, I can't shake the feeling that something bad is going to happen. XXX. One day later, what happened to that Genjutsu? Naruto asked, annoyed, as they approached the room they were supposed to enter. I think it's a test to eliminate people from the start, Sasuke said indifferently as he grabbed the door and opened it. When the door opened, it revealed a room full of ninjas from various countries. Furthermore, they were all staring at the newcomers. The three of them, that is, with fierce glares. Wow! There are a lot of tough-looking people here. Naruto thought in amusement as his eyes scanned the crowd and saw Hinata's team approaching them. Hey guys! Hinata, Kiba, Shino. The group smiled except for Shino, who was busy looking at a bug, and Hinata blushed when she saw Naruto looking at her. Well towards her team, but still in her direction. An impressive-looking group, aren't they? Kiba simply sneered at the rather fierce ninjas who sported scars of all sorts. We can take them, right, Akamaru? Kiba confidently asked his fluffy white dog, Akamaru, and Akamaru gave a rather enthusiastic bark of happiness. Sasuke just looked around the room, scrutinizing each ninja, until Ino jumped on him. There you are, Sasuke, Ino said, wrapping her legs around Sasuke's waist. I haven't seen you in so long. Get off him, Ino, Sakura yelled, getting everyone's attention. Why don't you try to force me, Sakura? Ino stuck out her tongue and pulled down the skin around her eye in a mocking gesture, further infuriating Sakura and causing Sakura to turn red in the face. You know, you should calm down a little. The people here are a little nervous about the trip here. A silver-haired man approached the group with a friendly smile and a Konoha leaf headband. And the one thing they don't need is a bunch of academy students getting wet behind their ears screaming. The group of 9 rookies simply stared at the approaching bespectacled man, except for Naruto and Hinata, who were busy talking about the Chunin exams. And who are you? Sasuke's cold voice asked as his onyx scrutinized the ninja's appearance. I'm Kabuto, and if I were you, I'd follow the advice of someone who's been here many times before. The silver-haired ninja spoke in a condescending voice, accompanied by an air that resembled arrogance. Sasuke's eyes flashed with anger at the ninja's belittling statement, and he gave the silver-haired ninja a glare as the ninja's glasses glittered with the light reflecting off their lenses. Oh, how many times have you been here? Sakura asked, curious about the part of his statement where he said he'd been here many times before. This is my 4th year participating and the 7th time. Oh, then you must know a lot of things that could help us get wet behind the ears, Genin. Sasuke said this with a cold smile that never reached his eyes. Kabuto just looked at the Uchiha with an even bigger smile. Fine, I'll take pity on you rookies. He pulled out a stack of cards. Here are my shinobi skill cards. That's where I've placed all the information I've gathered over the past 4 years. They also can't be revealed without my personal chakra. Kabuto placed a card down and placed his finger on it. The card spun around a bit, revealing information about the number of teams from each participating village. This caused a cold smile to play around Sasuke's mouth as he thought of all the things he could learn. Do these cards also contain information on individual fighters? Kabuto looked at Sasuke, the light reflecting off his rather shiny glasses. Yes, they can, but my collection is far from complete. So, tell me everything you have about Rock Lee of this village and Gaara of Tsunade, Sasuke stated, and Kabuto seemed to be pouting. You know their names and the villages they come from. Kabuto pulled out 2 cards. That makes it very easy. He put down 1 card and began to spin. Alright, first we have Rock Lee. Let's see now. He's completed 20 D-rank missions and 11 C-rank missions. His sensei is Might Guy and his teammates are Niji Hyuga and Tenten. This is also his first trip to the exams. He has significant skill in taijutsu, but seems to have nothing in ninjutsu or jinjutsu. Sasuke just gritted his teeth in frustration as the information didn't really help him figure out what special techniques Rock Lee could throw at him. And as for Gaara-. Kabuto trailed off. Suddenly, 3 figures charged straight at Kabuto. Kabuto quickly jumped out of the way as one of the figures launched a rather powerful blow with a gauntlet arm. "You missed me," Kabuto said with a slight scoff, but that's when Kabuto's glasses shattered, and he vomited on the ground. Before the group could continue the assault, a giant explosion of smoke sounded, drawing everyone's attention to the front. "I won't have any housing problems before the exams start," a giant man who resembled a bear growled. "If I see you doing that again, I'll kick you out of the exams. Do you understand?" The group nodded fervently. The man obviously scared them a little, or at least unnerved them. Naruto could understand their feelings. The man looked pretty tough, especially with all those scars that seemed glued to his face. "Now then, my name is Ibiki Marino, and I'm your proctor for the first stage. Now, follow me to the examination room." The man instructed, actually growling at them. The group of shinobis, well, the genins, followed Ibiki towards the door that was closed before. XXX. Inside, everyone was told to take a seat at a designated desk as Ibiki walked up to the board. "You'll be taking a written exam," Ibiki signaled, and the Chunin sitting on the wall went and handed in the papers. "You start with 10 points, and I only have one rule. If we catch you cheating, we'll deduct 2 points, and if we deduct all 10 points, you'll be expelled from the Chunin exam. Begin." Naruto looked at the paper and saw that all the questions were too difficult for any genin to answer. Naruto looked around and saw several people cheating to get answers. That's when it hit Naruto. The questions are too difficult for anyone to answer without cheating, Naruto thought, frowning inwardly. Naruto looked over and saw Ibiki smile as he watched several people trying to solve the test, some of them grabbing their hair in frustration, some of them frowning a lot as they tried to answer the difficult questions. "This test requires us to cheat without getting caught. Okay, now that I've figured out the true meaning of this test, the question is, how do I cheat?" The only thing Naruto had in his arsenal was Kage Bunshins and his FUINJUTSU, but his FUINJUTSU was useless in this situation. None of the seals Naruto made were for gathering information. That's when Hinata's movement caught his attention. She moved her paper into his line of sight. Naruto looked at Hinata, making her smile and blush her deep shade of red. "Okay, I have the information, but I need a way to distract these supervisors so I can get the information I need," Naruto thought as he tried to come up with a plan. Naruto moved his hand inside his pocket and felt around. He had a coin, a bottle of ink, a sticker, and a smoke bomb. Naruto smiled at the items he found in his pocket. It really pays to be the troublemaker, well, the ex-troublemaker. "All right, I have the things I need to make the right distraction." Naruto then took his things out of his pocket as carefully as he could and got to work. Naruto drew a transfer seal on both the sticker and the coin with ease, much thanks to his well-practiced FUINJUTSU. Naruto looked at the 2 seals he had just drawn and smiled at his handiwork. He placed the sticker under his desk where no one could see and then propped his feet up on the desk and began to flip the coin without a care in the world. "What's he doing?" Ibiki thought in bewilderment as he watched Naruto flip his coin, which was starting to draw everyone's attention. Ibiki walked over and took the coin from Naruto. "You're distracting the rest of the participants. Now, I know some people don't give a damn about their ninja careers, but some of us do." Ibiki walked away, not noticing Naruto's smirk. Ibiki placed the coin on his desk, and Naruto clasped his hands in a tiger sign under his desk, hiding them from the other's view. The coin seal slid off the coin and stuck to the desk. "Okay, party time." Naruto placed his single smoke bomb in the seal under his desk and made another tiger seal. The children watched as a puff of white smoke appeared, followed by a loud bang, and the entire front of the classroom was covered in a purple cloud. "What?" The Chunin stared at the cloud in shock and saw a large man emerge from the smoke, obviously angry. He approached Naruto, who was sitting with a rather extravagant smile plastered on his face. "You think that was funny?" Ibiki snarled at Naruto, who looked confused. "Don't play innocent with me. I had just put the coin down when a smoke bomb went off. And how or why would he do that? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow, maintaining his innocent look while laughing inwardly at the little trick he played on the man. Cheating, of course. Ibiki looked down, and a look of surprise quickly crossed his face when he saw that it was still completely blank instead of the half-filled page he expected to see. I'm sorry, Ibiki-sensei, but I had nothing to do with that. Naruto told the angry Ibiki in the most innocent voice he could muster. Naruto stood up and let Ibiki search him and his desk. Ibiki groaned in frustration as he didn't find a shred of evidence that could have pointed to Naruto as the culprit. Can I sit down? I really need to fill out my answer sheet. Naruto asked in the same innocent voice. Ibiki glared at Naruto, but since he had no evidence to accuse Naruto of cheating, he allowed Naruto to sit down and continue the test. Naruto looked at Hinata, who just smiled as she held her paper out of Naruto's line of sight once again. Naruto filled out the answer, remembering Hinata's answer sheet that he had peeked at during the interruption. Just as Ibiki called time, Naruto completed the last answer, the 9th answer. Now, on to the 10th and final question. Ibiki announced loudly, and groans echoed around the room. Now, I have another rule. You can choose to leave and try again next year, but if you stay and get the answer wrong, you'll never be allowed to take the Chunin exams again. Ibiki finished with a cruel smile on his scarred face. Everyone stared at Ibiki, who was still smiling, with obvious surprise on his face. Now, what do you choose? Ibiki smiled sadistically as his eyes took in the scared and shocked expressions on the Genin's faces, some of them with their jaws hanging down. That last question was weird, Naruto told the others while scratching the top of his head. Yeah, but I still can't believe you set off a smoke bomb in the exam room, Sakura said, a small crease forming on her forehead. It worked, at least. Naruto put his hands behind his head and smiled as they walked with their new supervisor, Anko. Besides, it was amazing. Aside from the fact that when he put my coin on the desk a smoke bomb exploded, I had nothing else to support his suspicion that I caused the smoke bomb. Yes, but if he finds out you did it, you'd be in big trouble. Sakura looked at Naruto with a stern expression on her face. Suddenly, he stopped talking along with many other students when they realized what training camp they were in. Welcome to Training Camp 44. Anko smiled sadistically at the group, also known as Sure No Mori, Forest of Death. XXX, we're back. Denpa shouted as they entered a small hut and was rewarded with a smack on the head from Ishiki. What was that for? Denpa complained. You don't need to shout, Baka. Ishiki frowned at the childish Denpa. Denpa began to defend himself, but before the two brothers could attack each other, a cough caught their attention. They turned around and bowed formally to an old man. How did it go? The old man asked as he sat down carefully. Everything went well, Denpa replied as he leaned against a tree. The items were delivered to Uzumaki as he wished. Excellent. He looked at the two with a cheerful smile. And how is the Uzumaki? Denpa and Ishiki looked at each other and smiled mischievously. Don't worry about him, Ishiki told the old man with a mischievous smile. We're keeping an eye on him. Denpa chimed in with Ishiki, an equally mischievous grin on his face. Then perhaps the Uzumaki clan will have a chance to return. The old man then had a coughing fit that subsided after a while. Maybe you should go inside and wait. Ishiki walked over and lifted the old man up. There's no reason for you to stress out. Denpa walked over and helped his brother lift the man to his feet. The two escorted the old man into the building and sighed. He doesn't have much time left. Ishiki spoke and received another blow from his brother. Do you think I don't know? Ishiki just stared at the ground. We just have to hope we get a chance to talk to Naruto and bring him here. Denpa nodded and walked with his brother into the forest once more. XXX. Naruto and his team entered the forest and felt a strange sensation of being watched. This is creepy. Sakura shuddered as a strange cold sensation passed through her. Don't worry, we'll be fine, Naruto said in an attempt to reassure her as he walked forward and looked into the dark forest. What's up, Dobe? Scared. Sasuke joked to Naruto, who simply glared at his teammate. Suddenly, the entire team heard a loud, ghost-like howl coming from the forest. Naruto looked back and saw Sasuke shudder involuntarily. What's wrong, team? Scared. Naruto laughed as he walked towards the forest with Sasuke watching him. But unbeknownst to the three genin, three mysterious figures were watching their every move. X. Naruto left his home due to a minor problem. After relieving himself on the ground hidden by the bushes, he turned around and found himself face to face with a giant snake. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he saw the snake looking at him. Just as the snake lunged, Naruto created a Kage Bunshin and threw it into the nearby trees. The snake swallowed the Kage Bunshin, making Naruto smile even though the snake turned on him. The serpent opened its mouth and let out a very low hiss as smoke poured out of its mouth. Good thing I packed some Shikyaku FUINJUTSU, Naruto thought just as the snake began to thrash about until it burst into a puff of smoke. Summoning. Naruto realized at that moment, and that's when Naruto started to get a bad feeling in his stomach. X. What's wrong, Sasuke-kun? The snake-like man standing in front of Sasuke and Sakura sneered at Sasuke. Is this the extent of the Uchiha clan's power? Sasuke gritted his teeth in anger, and a giant jet of fire came roaring towards the snake man, who easily jumped out of the way. Orochimaru, for that was the snake man's name, looked up and frowned for a second for a reason unknown to Sasuke, but quickly smiled. Well, I thought you'd be in my snake's stomach by now. Orochimaru spoke, and Sasuke was confused as to who he was talking to. So that large reptile was yours. Naruto appeared out of nowhere and stood before Orochimaru and his team. He looked back to see his team battered and bruised. You did this to them? Naruto asked menacingly, to Sakura and Sasuke's surprise. Orochimaru chuckled at Naruto's tone of voice. So what if I did? Orochimaru sneered. Naruto glared at him, and Orochimaru thought for just a split second that he saw the Kyuubi inside the Jinchuriki's eyes. He was right. Naruto's cerulean eyes were turning into red slits, and Sasuke felt the feeling he had felt on the bridge begin to drain out of Naruto in huge waves. Sasuke, take Sakura to safety. Naruto hissed at Sasuke through gritted teeth. Naruto then jumped off the branch and headed straight for the snake Orochimaru had summoned. Orochimaru smirked, spat out a long sword, and slashed Naruto through it, but found it to be just a clone. Orochimaru turned around and saw 3 more Narutos charging at him, but Orochimaru simply slashed at the clones once more, his sadistic grin growing even bigger. You're using Kage Bunshins for 2 reasons, Orochimaru stated rather amusedly, causing Naruto to curse. 1, in the hopes of distracting me long enough for your friends to escape. 2, to scout me out and then maybe think of a counterattack. But let me tell you something. Neither of these ideas are going to work. Sasuke suddenly appeared out of nowhere with his fingers on the tiger seal, his blood-red Sharingan burning. Sasuke, don't do it. Another Naruto came out of the tree and started running towards Orochimaru and Sasuke. Mansion Global. Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck's Beverly Hills mansion just got $8 million cheaper. Sponsored by Mansion Global. Undefined. Read more. Katan. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Sasuke spat out a large ball of fire, managed to catch Orochimaru and slammed him into a tree, setting it on fire. Naruto finally caught up to Sasuke, who just glared at the blonde. I don't need you to protect me. Do you understand? Sasuke continued to look at Naruto, who just looked at him with a confused expression. That doesn't matter. You're hurt. I can give you enough time to dash. Suddenly, Orochimaru's sword flew through the air and plunged straight into Naruto's side, nearly piercing Naruto's heart. Naruto coughed up blood as he looked through the smoke and saw Orochimaru emerge unharmed, aside from his burned shirt. You should pay attention, Naruto. Orochimaru mocked the blonde. Naruto simply stared at Orochimaru as he was lifted off the ground by Orochimaru's inhumanly long tongue holding the sword. Orochimaru then swung the sword along with Naruto, and Naruto sailed through the air into a tree, knocking himself unconscious. Naruto began to plummet towards the ground. Sakura barely caught him before he fell to his death. Sasuke looked at Orochimaru, who was grinning even bigger. You've certainly become a powerful ninja, Sasuke-kun. I have to go now, but I'll leave you with a gift. Orochimaru clasped his hands together, and his neck stretched at an alarming rate. Before Sasuke could dodge, the elongated neck appeared right next to his own, and Orochimaru's teeth sank into his neck. Orochimaru pulled away and saw the black mark appearing on Sasuke's neck. Sasuke grabbed his neck as pain shot through his body, screaming in agony. Sakura placed Naruto on the forest floor as carefully as she could before jumping on top of Sasuke. She caught Sasuke before he could fall headfirst onto the ground. "What did you do?" Sakura asked in a scared voice as the snake man laughed. "Give her a gift." Orochimaru simply stepped back into a tree and began to sink through the bark with a crooked smile on his face. Sakura felt Sasuke go limp in her grip but still breathing. She put Sasuke's arm around her neck before jumping down to Naruto and positioned herself in the hollow tree next to him. She went to check on Naruto and found his wound was gone. "That's not possible," Sakura thought. "There's no way anyone can heal that quickly." Sakura removed Naruto's cloak, vest, and shirt, and found that not a single wound remained. "I'm sure he hurt himself." After searching Naruto for any signs of injury and failing, she turned her attention to Sasuke, who was shaking as if he had a fever. "Wait, Sasuke. I'll go get some water," Sakura told Sasuke softly. Sakura left and returned several minutes later with some water in bottles. She poured the water onto a rag and placed it over Sasuke's head to keep him cool. "I guess I'll take first watch." Sakura looked up at the hollow tree, not seeing the eyes watching her every move. XXX teammate had the best luck of all. When they started, they set a trap. Fortunately, the first team they caught had the scroll they needed. Hinata was looking at the photo and smiling when she heard someone approaching her. She quickly put the photo away and watched Shino walking toward her. "What are you thinking?" Shino asked with his usual stoic face. "I wonder how Naruto and his team are doing." Hinata blushed as she looked at the water and saw her reflection. "Don't worry about them." Shino sat next to Hinata as he looked at the floor for any bugs. "If I know Naruto and Sasuke, they won't give up easily." Hinata smiled at her friend, who got up after not seeing any bugs and went to look for some. Hinata looked over and saw Kiba lying against a tree with a smile while Akamaru ran around him. "Please stay safe, Naruto-kun," Hinata prayed in her mind. XXX. Sakura was knocked to the ground by the Oto, meaning sound, ninja named Zaku. Not minutes after Sakura returned with some water, she and her unconscious teammates were attacked. At first, she was caught by her hair by the attacking woman, but Sakura quickly pulled out a kunai and cut it off. After that, she managed to fend off the team with a few bunshins, but after she managed to land on Zaku, he quickly struck her in the arm. Rock Lee appeared out of nowhere to help, but Dosu managed to incapacitate him by sending a sound wave into his inner ear, rupturing his eardrum. Sakura watched as Kin approached her with a smile on her face. "I think it's time to end this." Sakura spoke softly. As soon as those words left his mouth, the entire area was enveloped in dense, evil chakra. Everyone looked back to see Sasuke standing on his own 2 feet with his Sharingan activated and surrounded by purple chakra. Sasuke looked at the people in front of him as black marks ran down the left side of his face. He looked and saw Sakura beaten, battered, and bruised. "Sakura, who did that to you?" Sasuke's voice was filled with anger and rage. Zaku smiled despite the power he felt erupting from Sasuke. "I did it. So what?" Zaku immediately regretted saying anything when Sasuke disappeared and delivered a swift, brutal punch to Zaku, sending him flying into a tree. Dosu and Kin attempted to go help their teammate when Sasuke began rushing through hand signs. "Katan, the judgment of war." Sasuke spat out small fireballs that headed straight for the 2 Otonin. The 2 dodged, but Kin became the unfortunate target of Sasuke's kick. Sasuke looked down at his hands and started laughing like a madman. "All this power flows through me." Sasuke looked at Dosu, who dropped his scroll on the ground. "Spare me and my team and you can have the scroll," Dosu begged. Dosu watched as Sasuke simply shook his head. "Sorry I'm so late." Sasuke started to approach the 3 Nins, but stopped when Sakura hugged him from behind. "Please stop, Sasuke." Sakura cried into Sasuke's back as the 3 ninjas took a chance and escaped, leaving their scroll behind. "You've won now, please stop." Sasuke looked at her and seemed to calm down as the purple chakra and black markings disappeared. Sasuke stumbled slightly after the sudden release of his power. "I'm sorry, Sakura. I guess I lost it for a second," Sasuke told her, but his mind was on something else. "All that power is coursing through me. It was incredible. Whatever that snake did, It made me stronger. The two heard a groan and saw Naruto sitting up, rubbing the top of his head. Naruto looked around and saw that he wasn't wearing his vest, shirt, or cloak. What happened? Naruto looked between Sasuke and Sakura, and just before Sakura could speak, Sasuke shook his head and mouthed the words, "Don't say. We had to check your injury, Naruto. That's why your outerwear is off." Sakura looked at Naruto with a smile. Naruto looked around and saw Sasuke pick up the scroll the Odo Nines dropped. "What's that?" Naruto asked as he stood up and put on his clothes. "It's our ticket into that tower," Sasuke told her with a smile. Sasuke proudly showed his team the other scroll they needed to complete the test. Naruto jumped with excitement, Sakura smiled, and Sasuke just shrugged. "One step closer to my revenge," Sasuke thought. XXX, unknown location. "So, have you located the Uzumaki?" A mysterious figure asked in a deep voice. "Yes, apparently he's in Konoha." A man replied respectfully. The name of that town seemed to bring anger to the mysterious figure. "We can't just approach the village. We'd have to be careful." The figure stood up and began walking. "We have to wait until it's completely alone. Then it'll be ours." The figure hit a nearby wall and the entire wall collapsed, revealing an Uzumaki symbol on a flag with blood and burns all over it. "I'll make sure this time when I kill you, Uzumaki, you'll stay dead." He grabbed the flag, tore it off the wall, and set it on fire. He watched with cold eyes as the flag slowly burned to ash. XXX. Naruto and his team ran through the forest, watching every step they took. After Naruto managed to get dressed, the group turned to Rock Lee, who was still out of his mind. They stayed with him until he finally woke up. They asked him if he could hold on, to which he leaped into the air shouting about the flames of youth. Before they could ask him if he could return to his team, he ran away. When three figures crossed their path, all three of them tensed. But after a closer look, Naruto saw that it was Hinata's team. Sasuke and Sakura tried to stop Naruto, but he continued running toward the three with a smile. "Hey guys!" The whole team turned around and assumed different postures. "Wow, you guys sure are nervous." Naruto slowly backed away with a nervous smile. "I'm sorry, but this is a test every man can take," Shino told the blonde as bugs crawled out of his clothes. Even Hinata kept her distance, but still gave Naruto a faint smile, blushing profusely. "So you don't trust me?" The group simply hardened their stances. "Judging by how you're not attacking, I'd go so far as to say you have all your scrolls." Kiba's facial expression was all Naruto needed to confirm his suspicion. "Don't worry, our secret is safe with me. My team was heading to the tower, and if we joined forces, you know, safety in numbers." "Oh, and how do we know you're not planning to steal our scrolls?" Shino asked. Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out both scrolls. "Why would we do that?" Naruto asked. Sasuke and Sakura suddenly jumped down from the tree and Sakura punched Naruto in the head. "What are you doing?" Sakura yelled at Naruto, who was slightly out of the loop. "You're not letting the enemy see what you've got." Team 8 just watched in amusement as Sakura continued to shake Naruto like a rag doll. Hinata then did the same, revealing that they had both scrolls. "Hinata, why did you do that?" Kiba said in a horrified voice. Because Naruto is right." Hinata stammered as she looked at the ground while steepling her fingers. "It would be safer if we traveled together." Kiba was about to speak once more when Shino spoke up. "It's a logical idea to join." Shino looked at her two teammates and watched as Naruto got up from the ground. "Great, so it's decided we'll go to the tower together." Naruto started walking towards the tower with a smile on his face. The group walked towards the tall building, but everyone was looking at each other except for two. Naruto was looking at the tower and Hinata was looking at Naruto with a bright red blush. XXX. After arriving at the tower, the teams opened their scrolls and found a different person emerging from the scroll in front of them. For Team 8, it was Kurenai, but for Team 7, it was Genma. They told the genin the significance of this test. After waiting a bit longer, a few more teams began to enter. Then Sarutobi appeared and looked down at the group, which was all battered and covered in dust. "Now, before we move on to the next part of the Chunin exam, if there is anyone who does not wish to continue, please speak now." Sarutobi watched as several people raised their hands and left the tower. Now, we can begin, but since we have such a large group this year, we will be splitting the final test of the Chunin exams into 2 parts. This drew much groaning, but after Sarutobi raised his hand, he continued. Now, this test is to see what you have learned and how well you can beat your opponent. I will leave the rest of the explanation to Hayate. Hayate did just that and explained the rules to the participants. Does everyone understand the rules? Hayate looked around and saw several people nodding their heads. Very well. Now we'll see who goes up first. Everyone looked up at the screen and saw different names running across it until it finally stopped on 2 names. Zaku Abomi versus Naruto Uzumaki. Hayate said loudly. The teams began to leave the area when Naruto looked over and smiled at Zaku, who simply looked back at him. Are the participants ready? Hayate looked from Zaku to Naruto, who both nodded. Okay, begin. Hayate jumped back and because he had barely said those words, Zaku raised his arms and showed his palms to Naruto. Zankaha, decapitating air wave. Naruto watched as the wind pressure blew toward him and the other Kage Bunshins he had created. Zaku saw and heard the explosion as the pressure wave managed to hit its target. 1 down, 2 to go. Zaku declared proudly with a smile. Zaku turned around, but had to duck when he saw Naruto going for a kick to his head. Zaku jumped and swung his arm, facing Naruto, but then Naruto pulled a red seal from his pouch. If I hadn't dodged that, I would have lost a lot more than this match. Naruto smiled at Zaku. I'd love to know how this is done. Naruto looked at the red seal he had just taken out, causing Zaku to frown even more. Well, if you like it, then you'll love it. Zaku began absorbing more air pressure. Zankakyakua, extreme decapitating air wave. Zaku fired a much larger version of his previous attack that shot towards Naruto, and Naruto could have sworn he heard the air slice around him. FUINJUTSU, Shikyaku. Naruto yelled loudly just as the shockwave came within a few feet of him. The tag exploded and shot out a stream of flames, but that was Naruto's mistake. As soon as the stream of flames hit the pressure wave, it went out. Naruto's eyes widened as he was hit with the full force of the attack. The people behind Naruto were forced to get out of Zaku's blast or suffer the punishment he dealt to Naruto. Zaku started laughing gleefully as smoke started to seep out and everyone saw Naruto lying in a crater, bloodied and injured. I win, weakling. Zaku approached, but stopped when he heard a noise, looked up and saw another Naruto falling towards him. Zaku raised one of his arms and fired his blast of pressurized air, but Naruto created a shadow clone that knocked him out of the way just in time. Naruto landed on the platform where the other contestants were waiting for their turn. Naruto took off his cloak and threw it to Kakashi, who caught it. Keep it safe, sensei. I don't want to throw it away. Naruto told his sensei as he jumped down to the floor below. Now where were we? Zaku gritted his teeth and raised his arms again. Oh yeah, I remember now that you lost. Naruto smiled at Zaku quite angrily. Naruto charged just as Zaku launched another attack. Naruto dodged out of the way of the blast of air, but still received a cut on the side of his face. He seems to be controlling the air pressure with those tubes in his hands. Naruto created for Kage Bunshin. I need to find a way to plug those holes. Naruto sent the clones to try and get close to Zaku to allow Naruto to render his long-range abilities ineffective. Zaku saw this and jumped back, firing at Naruto's clones. You can't beat me like that. Zaku smirked as he aimed at Naruto, who smirked. Why does he have to smile? Zaku decided it didn't matter and slashed at Naruto, but the Naruto he hit burst into smoke. Zaku turned around and saw Naruto smirking at him. Zaku spun around, already charging up his air pressure, but Naruto grabbed his wrist. Zaku fired, hoping to blow Naruto away, and it started to work, but before Naruto could fly, he zoomed in and wrapped his hand around Zaku's neck. Naruto flew into the wall, leaving an imprint of himself on the wall. I told you, you damn weakling, you can't beat me. As the smoke cleared, everyone watched as Naruto started to laugh, but the problem is I already won. Naruto raised his hand to make a tiger seal. Zaku started to try to walk forward, but found himself unable to move. He looked down and saw black lines all over his body. You're probably wondering what's going on. Well, this was one of the first seals I ever made. It paralyzes my opponent, leaving them vulnerable. To prove his point, 2 clones jumped out from behind Zaku and punched him in the face, sending him to the ground in a heap. You've lost. Naruto walked over to Zaku, pulled out a kunai, and held it to his throat. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. Hayate announced as everyone else took a good look at what Naruto could do. Damn, he used a Kenjutsu so easily, and he can use FUINJUTSU. Baki was watching Naruto walk up the stairs with his hands in his pockets. What is Konoha teaching its ninja? Baki looked down and saw Gaara watching Naruto's every move. Looks like Gaara just found his prey for this thing. Baki just hoped Gaara wouldn't do anything until the time was right. The teams looked over and saw the screen start to flash names until it ended at Shikamaru versus Kintsuchi. What a pain! Shikamaru muttered as he walked slowly toward the ground, his steps showing no sign of emotion. Let's get this over with. What's wrong? Are you afraid of getting hit by a girl? Kin mocked Shikamaru, who just yawned. Start. Hayate swung his arm and watched as Kin threw a senbon at Shikamaru, who lazily dodged to the left, but still got caught with a senbon on his shoulder. So you're doing something similar to the Kage Shuriken no Jutsu, Shadow Shuriken technique, Shikamaru said as he drew the senbon from his shoulder. But instead of shuriken, you're using senbon. This made the familiars frown. So you figured it out. Kin reached into her backpack and pulled out 3 senbon. But that won't save you from the sound. Shikamaru was confused by what she meant until he heard a bell ring. Shikamaru covered his ears, but saw Kin shake her head. That won't help you. It's already inside your head. Shikamaru watched as Kin split into 3. Now you can't beat me. Kin went to throw her senbon, but stopped. Kagemain no Jutsu, Shadow Imitation Technique, success. Shikamaru looked up with a smile. He stood up, swung his right arm, and watched as Kin did the exact same thing. Good. Now it's time to put an end to this troublesome game. Shikamaru reached into his backpack and grabbed a shuriken, but Kin did the exact same thing. Game set. Shikamaru threw his shuriken, and Kin did the same. Shikamaru threw his head back as hard as he could, and Kin followed, but instead of hitting anything, she crashed into a wall. Shikamaru let his shadow slide towards him as Kin slid off the wall. Lost. Match. Shikamaru started up the stairs when Hayate called him the winner. Mansion Global. Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck's Beverly Hills mansion just got $8 million cheaper. Sponsored by Mansion Global. Undefined. Learn more. Naruto patted Shikamaru on the back as he walked past. Good work, Shikamaru. Shikamaru just yawned. Naruto turned around and saw Sasuke and Yoroi's names on the board. Naruto turned around and gave Sasuke a smile. Good luck, Sasuke. Sasuke turned around and looked at Naruto for a few seconds, then began his descent into the arena. Naruto was a little shocked by the look Sasuke gave him. What was that? Naruto looked over and saw Sasuke take a fighting stance. Triple X. Denpa and Ishiki stared at the old man, who seemed to be shivering from an invisible cold. The old man gestured to the 2 of them, and they politely approached. We need to find them, he said in an uneven voice. Find who? Denpa leaned toward him with a sad look on his face. The old man leaned forward and whispered something in Denpa's ear. Ishiki looked and saw his brother's eyes widen in shock. When Denpa looked at the old man, he had a look of hesitation. Are you sure about that? Denpa watched as the old man nodded before closing his eyes and falling asleep. What did he want? Ishiki shouted, only for his brother to look at him with a small smile. We have to go to Nami no Kuni. That was all Ishiki needed to know. Well, if that's the case, then we'd better get moving. Ishiki tossed his brother a cloak as he put on his own. Let's go. With that, the 2 left the cabin and headed toward their destination. Triple X. Kakashi decided to take Sasuke to the hospital after their match to get him treated. The next match after that was Sakura versus Ino, which ended with neither of them winning. Next came Kiba versus Shino, and right off the bat, Kiba charged, which only got him trapped in Shino's bugs. After a while of the bugs draining his and Akamaru's chakra, they gave up. Temari and Tenten were up next, and it ended in one of the most twisted things Naruto has ever seen. After firing Tenten's guns and slicing her up, Temari placed her fan right under Tenten and dropped her onto her fan. The result was Tenten leaning over Temari's fan backward. Then, to add insult to injury, Temari threw the incapacitated girl into the wall, only for Tenten to be caught by Rock Lee. That was so rude. Rock Lee, for the first time, looked really pissed off, but before he could do anything, Guy stepped in and stopped his student. Temari walked up the steps with a smile on her face, but as she walked past Team 7, she turned to look at Naruto, who stared back at her, and for just a split second, Temari thought she saw his eyes redden and a giant fox loom behind him with a hungry look in its eyes. Kankuro looked at his sister, who suddenly looked as white as a sheet. What happened? Kankuro watched as Temari turned to him. I have a feeling he's like Gaara, Temari said as she looked over at the arena screen to see Kankuro fighting a man named Misumi. The fight didn't last long. Misumi wrapped herself around Kankuro and snapped his neck, only for Kankuro to reveal himself as a puppet. The real Kankuro was hidden in the bandages. Kankuro made a fist while his chakra chains were attached to the puppet. The puppet wrapped around Misumi and broke every bone in his body except for his neck. The next match made Hinata nervous because she was facing her cousin, Niji. Naruto walked over and patted Hinata on the shoulder, giving her an encouraging smile. Hinata walked into the arena with Niji frowning. What are you doing? Hinata looked at Niji, who shook his head. You can't be serious about fighting me. Hinata looked up and saw Naruto give her a thumbs up and she nodded. She took a fighting stance as she activated her Byakugan. Her eyes. She's not the same as before. Niji looked at Naruto, who smiled at her. Did he do anything to help her? Niji didn't care about that and took his own stance. All right, begin. Niji and Hinata attacked each other. Niji launched a palm forward, but Hinata blocked it with her own. Hinata did the exact same thing, but Niji deflected her attack. This continued for a good couple of minutes before Niji, instead of deflecting Hinata's attack, grabbed her arm and threw her to the ground. I told you, I'm destined to win this fight. Niji met Hinata's gaze, but dodged his chakra-laced hand. Niji's grip on Hinata's arm loosened, and she was able to get back to her feet. I don't care. I'll keep fighting. Hinata charged, but Niji jumped over her and landed on his feet. Hinata didn't need to turn her head to see Niji throwing his hand forward. Hinata spun around and grabbed Niji's arm. She pushed at him with her palm, but he caught that as well. The two of them pushed back with added chakra and were thrown back. Niji stopped and rushed at Hinata, but instead of attacking, Hinata stood her ground. As Niji closed in on her, Hinata threw her hand forward, but as Niji went to catch it, he felt his hand slash open. He jumped back and looked at his hand to see something that looked like a cut wire fence in his palm. Niji looked closer at Hinata's arm and found that her entire right arm was dancing with razor-sharp chakra. She's coating her arm in razor-sharp chakra to cut me, Niji muttered to himself. That could be a problem if she hits me. Niji dashed toward her, but this time he zigzagged toward her. Hinata followed Niji as he got closer and closer, but just as she threw out her arm, Niji jumped. Hinata turned to face him, but Niji slammed his chakra-infused hand into Hinata's back, forcing her forward into a wall. Niji walked toward her until he noticed two photographs on the floor. Niji picked them up and looked at the first one to see Hinata standing with Hayashi, her mother, and Hanabi. He looked at the other one and smiled slightly. So that's why you're so brave, Niji said, showing Hinata the picture of Naruto and her at Ichiraka's house at night. But the only difference is that Naruto gives Hinata a kiss on the cheek, making her blush. Hinata's eyes widened as Naruto cursed. Hinata felt his jacket and found nothing. Give that back. Hinata looked at Niji with a faint glare. I wonder if Hayashi knows about your little love affair with the village outcast. Niji jumped back as Hinata slammed her hand into the ground right where Niji was standing. I said, give it back to me. This time there was danger in his words. If you want it, come get it. Niji said this as he put the picture in his shirt with a smile. Hinata charged forward, doing the only thing Niji wanted to do, get angry. Niji dodged Hinata's punches and lunges, wanting to anger her a little more. Hinata pushed forward with both hands, and that's when Niji seized his opportunity. He ducked under Hinata's attack and threw his arms forward, pinning her in the stomach. Hinata coughed up a small amount of blood and was sent tumbling back. "You're doing exactly what I want you to do, Hinata. Get angry. The angrier you get, the more reckless you become. I bided my time and waited for you to make a mistake. How too bad." Hinata just looked at Niji and smiled. "What do you have to be happy about? I may have lost and you may have hurt me, but I still love you, Nizan," Hinata said with a smile. But this seemed to anger Niji. "I don't know what I've done to anger you, but I still care for you. That's why I pity you, because you live your life filled with anger." Niji saw red and charged, even with Hayate telling him the match was over. Niji stepped up and swung his arm, but it never connected as a purple hexagonal barrier appeared between him and Hinata. Niji looked up and saw Naruto already jumping with his hands clasped together in a tiger seal. "I think that's enough," Naruto said as he walked over to Hinata. Niji charged at Naruto, who turned and dodged Niji's thrust, and continued toward Hinata. Niji turned and went to attack, but found himself unable to move. He looked down and saw the same black lines as before. Naruto turned around, gasping for air. He walked over to Niji, took the picture, and handed it back to Hinata, who was picking up her family photo. "I'm sorry," Hinata said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was supposed to keep the image safe and not let anyone see it." Naruto simply patted her on the shoulder and held her up as some medics came over to look at her. "It's not your fault. I knew someone would find out." Naruto smiled at Hinata. "But I guess we'll deal with the problem when it comes." Hinata nodded and walked out with Kurenai right behind her. "You know, you two were made for each other," Niji said as he applied a bit of chakra and broke Naruto's seal. "You're both weaklings. I mean, look at you. You can barely use a FUINJUTSU without it consuming a huge amount of chakra." Naruto chuckled and looked at Niji. "Funny how you call us weak, when Hinata almost hit you," Naruto said as he watched Niji bristle with anger. "And how I managed to dodge and then put a seal on you to paralyze you." Niji was about to attack, but he calmed himself and looked at Naruto with his calm, calculating eyes. "Sorry, but you're going to have to do a lot better to get me." Niji watched as Naruto shrugged and started up the steps, but he gave Hinata one last smile before disappearing. "Naruto," Kakashi shouted with a gesture. "I just got here to watch the last few seconds of Hinata's fight. I didn't know you two were going out." "That was the point." Naruto looked at Kakashi. "What do you think would happen if the village found out about Hinata and me?" Kakashi just nodded. "Not that it's any of my business, but how long have you two been together?" Kakashi watched as Naruto began to think. "About a day before team placements," Naruto said, leaning against the wall. "She was the only one besides Sarutobi and a few others who actually tried to help me get over Irika's death. She managed to keep me from curling up and dying. So I guess that's what brought us together." Naruto watched as Choji and Dosu's names appeared, and after Asuma bribed Choji with barbecued pork, Choji jumped into the arena ready to fight. "All right, Mom. I'm going to beat you up and eat all the pork I can fit in my stomach," Choji yelled with fire in his eyes. "We'll see." Dosu lifted his gauntlet arm and smiled through the bandages. Hayate gave the thumbs up, and that's when Choji clasped his hands together. "Baika no Jutsu, Expansion Jutsu," Choji yelled as he inflated himself like a balloon. Choji then sucked his head, arms, and legs into his inflated body and yelled, "Nakuden Sansha!" He quickly began rolling towards Dosu at high speed. Dosu jumped out of Choji's way and watched as he crashed into a wall, making a hole in it, but Choji turned around and rolled back towards Dosu. Dosu jumped out of the way again and watched Choji hit the wall. Dosu jumped to his side and punched his inflated body, but to no effect. "This is sad," Dosu said as he raised his hand holding a tiger seal. "Goodbye." Suddenly, the entire arena was filled with a high-pitched screech. Everyone looked over and saw Choji lying on the ground, completely disoriented. Hayate named Dosu the winner as the mummified man walked up the steps. Rock Lee, at this point, was bouncing around in excitement knowing it was his turn. His and Gaara's names appeared on the monitor. Gaara disappeared in a swirl of sand and reappeared on the arena floor, looking down at Rock Lee. "Come on, let's get this over with," Gaara said emotionlessly. "Yes, now I can show off my youthful spirit." Rock Lee jumped into the air excitedly. Gaara kept an emotionless face as he watched the excited ninja jump and land in front of him. Gaara looked from Lee to Naruto with a murderous glint in his eyes. Hayate looked at the two participants and raised his arm. "Begin," he said, and watched as Lee went straight for Gaara. Lee threw a punch at Gaara's face, but a wall of sand erupted between them. Lee spun around and tried to deliver a swift kick to Gaara, but that too was blocked by the sand. Gaara looked at Lee and the sand rushed at him, trying to catch him. Lee started to jump back, trying to avoid the sand, but the sand was faster. It slid underneath Lee and made him slip. When Lee looked up, he saw a wave of sand falling toward him. The sand hit the ground and exploded, but when the sand shifted, Lee was nowhere to be seen. Gaara looked around until he saw his sand rise up behind him to protect him. Gaara turned and saw that Lee had tried to punch him. Gaara watched as his sand swung Lee against the wall, but Lee rolled over and landed on his feet. Lee pushed away from the wall, leaving a small crater as he launched himself at Gaara. Lee stopped when a wall of sand approached him and he was forced to evade. Lee jumped onto the pair of giant hands at the side of the arena and looked at Gaara, who looked back at him. "How can I hit an opponent who is protected from attacks from any direction?" Lee looked at Guy, who nodded, making him smile. "Good." Lee jumped up and took off his orange leg warmers, revealing weights on his legs. "Do you think taking off a little weight will get you through Gaara's sand?" Temari chuckled at the thought. Lee took off his weights and sighed. "I can move much more easily now." Lee dropped the weights as everyone watched them plummet towards the ground, but when they hit the ground, they all got the shock of their lives. As soon as the weights hit the ground, they formed a couple of craters and caused the ground to shake a little. Gaara kept his eyes on Lee until he disappeared. Gaara looked around for Lee, but all he saw was Lee's fist moving faster than his sand could keep up. He looked around and saw his sand rising and falling with fist-sized holes punched in several places. Suddenly, the sand stopped moving, and Gaara looked around for Lee until he saw a shadow above him. When he looked up, he saw Lee spinning like a top, but before Gaara or his sand could react, Lee kicked him with an axe to the top of his head. Gaara was sent skidding backward with some blood dripping from his head. "That's not possible," Kankuro thought. "Gaara has been injured." The group watched as Lee smiled and looked at Guy, who nodded once more. Lee began unraveling his bandages until they touched the ground. Lee then ran over to Gaara and began running circles around him. Gaara watched the blurry images of Lee until he got kicked in the jaw. Gaara was sent skyward, but only by a few inches. Lee glared slightly and began kicking in quick succession. But just as Gaara was at the right height for the move Lee was about to perform, pain shot through Lee's body, causing him to flinch. Gaara saw this and began to spill some sand, but before he could do anything with it, Lee wrapped him in his bandages and began spinning towards the ground at high speed. "Omote Renge, forward lotus," Lee shouted just before the two fell to the ground. As the two hit the ground, a giant explosion was heard and a giant cloud of dust and rocks shot upwards. "Gaara," Temari thought to herself, feeling a little worried for her little brother. Such power. Naruto watched as the smoke began to clear to reveal Lee, who was slowly rising from the crater, and Gaara, who was standing upside down with his head in the ground. "I did it." Lee was about to lie back when he heard a chuckle coming from behind him. Lee turned around and saw Gaara rising from the ground with sand pouring out of him, while wearing a very disturbing smile. "Is that all you've got?" Gaara sounded disappointed. "I was hoping to play with you a little longer." Gaara licked his lips. Lee just watched as a wave of sand headed straight for him,